My name is Charlie Shaw. I'm the CEO of Gold Vision CRM. I'm somebody who's passionate about sales and marketing, and I'm drawing on our experience for this session of the amount of time that I and of course Jiggy spend talking to sales leaders, not just customers but prospects and people in our industry. We're both in the industry around that. I'll let Jiggy introduce herself in a moment. The subject that we're talking about today is businesses are finding it difficult at the moment. All the news is gloomy, the forecasts are gloomy, and of course a lot of those things are beyond our business control. And so what we're going to be talking about is focusing on the things that you can control, minding your own business, as they say, and that can really yield results. So Jiggy, tell me a little bit about yourself as well.
So yeah, thanks Charlie. Jiggy Patel, Head of Customer Experience here at Gold Vision. Have a multifunctional role really. I work with key accounts and do quite a bit of account management with our existing customers, but I also have a new business hat. So absolutely work with the sales team and work with the marketing team as well. So I've spearheaded and worked with our social selling strategy with our marketing team and our sales team. So we'll be touching on all of those areas as part of this webinar.
Perfect. So shall we hit it? Perfect. So the news is out there all the time. It would be great if we could shield our sales team from all this gloom, but I'm afraid that's not going to happen. Bloomberg have got it right there. All their forecasts are gloomy. And what we're seeing when I'm talking to sales leaders and sales managers, what I'm seeing is that this is bringing them particular day-to-day issues. Their sales team morale is actually difficult to manage. This is, of course, exacerbated by the fact that the sales team isn't in one place. They're working remotely. And I know that sales teams have worked remotely in the past, but the combination of the gloom plus the remote working is difficult. And the thing that goes with this as well is when you've got such a significant external factor like a gloomy economy, it's really difficult to enforce accountability. So some of the rules that you may have had, standard sales target rules, they're just difficult to, they just go out of the window. They're difficult to conduct because the salesperson's response is, well, it's the economy, stupid. It's not my fault. What do you expect me to do about it? All of those things. And so what we're going to give you are a few hints and tips, hopefully, to turn this round to the positive side of things in terms of what you can do about it. What we're seeing with many businesses is they're not quite understanding that things need to change. The lockdown has provided many businesses with an opportunity to reflect on their business and how it's going to change. And they're doing that. Sometimes an area, though, that isn't receiving the attention it deserves is the sales process and the lead process. And what we're seeing is that those sales processes that aren't perfect, a lot of processes have slack in them, things missing that didn't matter when it was a good economy. They're not being picked up and they're not being changed. So specifically, we've just got a few points here. So what we're seeing is that businesses haven't got an end-to-end airtight process. So they're not getting a full population of leads coming in at the beginning and a full controlled process in terms of how they've got to the end, what decisions have been made along the way. And when things are tight, people panic and they start cherry-picking deals and leaving other deals to one side. That can actually get worse because if salespeople are panicking, just following up the seemingly easy stuff, they may not use all the benefits of a proper process, a proper qualification process. And then you're getting all the way through to the end. And where price may be such a high determining factor in the end decision when cash is tight, they may lose it at the end of the process. And that's really bad because you've spent all the time and resource trying to win the deal and ended up with nothing. It's made even worse if it's not noticed, if it's not picked up by the business.
And the next point about account-based selling, you talk about, talking to those people that are easy. I mean, I love to talk to a handful of customers that I work with all the time, but they're not necessarily always the best people to focus on right now. So, now you want to be thinking about where there's account growth and where you can be strategic with the growth that you work on. It's, not a case of, the customers that I like the best. So it's being able to direct and home in on those particular accounts, isn't it, Charlie?
That's a really good point, Jiggy. What we see in both ourselves and our customers and prospects is that quite often you'll get an account and there's a relationship between a salesperson and that particular business, but nobody's gone the extra mile because it didn't really need to happen to understand whether that business is in a particular vertical market or whether it's part of an international group, and then work out how that is going to be taken advantage of. The system, it's often exacerbated sometimes, where sales incentives that are designed for the good times, sales turnover, everything's working, the business is making a bit of a margin. Sometimes when things are much more tight, more difficult, and customers are negotiating much harder, the margin side of things doesn't quite get into play. And sometimes then you're finding that in tight conditions like this, you're bringing in deals that don't have enough margin and you're paying out uncontrolled commission on those deals that have poor margin. And then the last point, Jiggy.
The key thing that we're trying to home in on here is right now your processes are in the spotlight, and this is where real exposure is. So with that, let's move on. When we talk about forecasts, what do we mean about forecasts? We're not just talking about the leads that you're working with and the opportunities that you have with your current prospects. We're talking about your existing customer base as well and growing that existing client base. We're talking about inbound marketing and how you're dealing with it, whether you have any form of web tracking or how you're tracking, are your customers actually interested in the products or services that you're offering? And don't forget, with your existing customers, upselling and also the strategic growth that's there that you can start to deal with social media and just being active on social. The key point there, sorry, Charlie, is it's about new and existing business growth.
Yeah, and this is what we're seeing here, what we've definitely seen in the last few months is a lot of businesses have found it really limiting where they've just got a simple forecasting tool that just forecasts deals that the salespeople have decided to type into the system. And of course, when morale's low, as we've been talking about in situations like this, they're not going to type this stuff into the system. Remember, it's not my fault, it's the economy's fault. So if you've got a system that can actually show when people are looking at your website, perhaps show when deals that you may have thought were lost in the dim and distant past, but actually they're showing interest again, these are low-hanging fruit that can easily bring you additional business during the difficult times.
So with that, I'm actually going to throw up a quick poll, and it'd be great if you can answer honestly. What would you say is the primary issue holding you back right now from what we've been talking about? Is it to do with poor lead capture and qualification? Is it maybe the lack of leads? The fact that you don't have a central resource to capture data, poor visibility with remote working, or it could be morale right now. Let us know, where you're at currently, because, we're talking about a lot of these problems later on. It'll just be really interesting. Interesting that lack of leads is featuring, isn't it, Charlie?
It's really interesting because actually one of the points that I was going to make, and I've had this discussion with a few sales leaders recently, even more experienced people, and I would love to exclude myself from this, but I can't. There's a very strong temptation to panic and go traditional routes, and those traditional routes might be, buying in a list of contacts from a particular industry, or buying or paying for leads. and rather than using your own resources.
Yep.
And actually, I did briefly try this and found thankfully I kicked myself up my own bottom very quickly and realized that actually, as soon as I saw the quality of stuff that was coming through, it's just a waste of time, frankly. And then, of course, what we did was as you'll see in a later, as part of the steps to success in this, what we saw, of course, was that the proper marketing approaches, the touch points, all of those things from our own systems actually have provided the leads. And at the moment, we're so busy with new business that it's difficult to actually catch up. It was something of a surprise to find out just how much gold there was in our existing target base that was actually, there to find.
But we're lucky that we do have that central resource. Notice that, being able to capture this information, you need somewhere to be able to put that in the first place.
The morale is interesting, and what we'll talk about, and part of it's, keeping in touch with your team, but we'll hit those points. Here's a bit of good news. The good news is that it's not all bad. And actually, the new normal that everyone talks about is not so new after all. I've actually spent years dealing with sales leaders who say that the only valuable time is spent when they're physically with customers, physically in front of customers. And I keep getting this, I do not want my sales guys in front of a computer. Well, not so much choice at the minute. And actually what they're finding is that sometimes that was the right scenario. Certainly, I've seen sales teams that give, really strong technical advice on certain products, and the customer welcomes them into their premises physically. But just a lot of the time, it never was the right approach, or hasn't been the right approach for several years. And of course, the customers are now finding this new normal very good. Do you just want to run through those points, Jiggy?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's worth making the point that, right now, Charlie says, businesses are planning now. If you pick up the phone to your customers and talk to them, you'll realize that actually they're doing a lot of planning as to how they're going to survive over the next few months and the next year. So really, now's the time for you to get in there and be part of that planning also.
If I could just interrupt there, Jiggy, as well. The point was lack of leads. And if the businesses are planning, which we know they are, there's lots of evidence for that, they're also doing something that is unusual in the sales world, where, yes, of course, cash is tight, but they are making quicker decisions. I've seen more deals come to fruition over a much shorter period of time in the last month or two than I've ever seen, than I've seen for many years.
Yeah, certainly.
So those are opportunities.
And, right now, buyers are preferring remote. People do have the resources and the tools that they need to, and people are available. If you do pick up that phone, it's very rare for me not to be able to contact someone because people are available. Video, live chat skills, absolutely, they're here to stay, and hopefully you've not had any problems in that area. But now's the time also to think about methods like live chat on your website, video, use portals as part of your customer tools, but really do get onto the social media bandwagon as well, and we'll talk about that a little bit further. Forced acceptance of new technologies. I think that the age that we're in now, and social media has been around for a long time, but right now it's very much a case of if your brand isn't on social media, you could already be missing out, but it's never too late. And again, we'll give you some further tips in that area. But you've got all of the insights at your fingertips with products like LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. The planning that these businesses and your customers are doing right now, some of it they're shouting about on products like LinkedIn. So those are the perfect platforms to actually find and use that as an engagement tool.
Yeah. And what are we going to do that's within our control and to improve the good stuff and to cut out some of the bad stuff that we've been talking about? And given that the most popular response about things holding people back was lack of leads. We'll be hitting some of that as well.
Yeah, so we've come up with our 5 steps to sales focus, and just very briefly to run through them. Really only one of these will absolutely help, but number 1, make your leads count, and we'll come into that a little bit further. Sales and marketing alignment, although difficult to achieve, it will absolutely give you results. Embrace social media and insights, provide communication preference, and above it all, have a central tool and control processes where you can capture everything, you can share and provide visibility of everything that you're trying to do. And of course, with this, you will be embracing the lessons of remote working.
So in terms of making your leads count, we've all heard those statistics, haven't we? That a large proportion of decisions are made before the traditional call to the sales team. And if your lead process relies on inbound customer contact, people filling in a form or calling your sales team, then you're missing out on a great deal. So having your CRM system automatically connecting with some of these sources that give you indication of business interest, be they touching your website, or be they showing interest in a webinar, or be they showing interest in a blog or one of your important insights, then those are important. Perhaps looking at your price, those sorts of things, and you can start touching those people and generating leads much more fruitfully than before. The point that we're trying to make about leads now is that in this tightened economy, you've got to make each one count, which means making sure that you introduce into your initial qualification and then later qualification stages processes that stop you from running all the way with a deal to the end and then losing it. You want to, I'm going to pick somebody else's phrase here about make sure that you win what you go for. So be quite clear about qualifying stuff out. In our business, we've got something, it sounds terrible, it's called the blood board process. And it engages the sales team, but it's all about putting in very simple, clear steps in the sales process where the salespeople use their professional integrity when they are confident that a sales deal is going to come through. But they don't just, it's like the US election. You can't just say, oh, I think there's something great about this deal. You've got to have evidence to back it up. You've got to have said why it's qualified in and why this isn't going to get taken away from me at the last minute. It's not magic. It's not an art. If you're dealing with a business and you think you've really won over that deal, and then suddenly, all of a sudden, you find out that they're part of a bigger group and somebody else in the group has made that decision and it's somebody else because they've never talked to you, who's to blame? Well, actually, it's a really easy decision. It's easy to post it in the same way as the economy. It's not my fault, it was out of my control. Well, asking those questions can really bring that back into your control.
And just to add, Charlie, web tracking is really important for your existing customer base as well as leads that you're working with, because you can then plan the conversations that you're having with these customers based on what they've actually been interested in. As Charlie says, with a strong qualification and by tracking these leads, you can start to nurture those leads as part of your normal marketing program because they're all in one place.
Just a point to add to that as well before you go over, it's probably relevant to this one as well, actually. It's about having key performance indicators on your response times. Yep. I get surprised, disappointed, lots of words go with it, about how often I make a call to a business when there's been a proposal response, a request for proposal put out. And we respond and they say, oh, we've had no responses from anybody else yet. That's unforgivable, especially in difficult times like now. So make sure that you're clear and it's visible about who's responding and when. And if that's there, make sure that people aren't fighting over leads, that there is one response and that they're properly allocated.
And you're right, Charlie, that hits this slide as well. So slide 2 is about sales and marketing alignment. And I mentioned earlier, it's not always that easy to achieve, but it's really important. And I think more important than ever right now, with social being upon us and people using more and more methods for social selling. But point 2 there is create a service level agreement to set expectations. And that's between your sales and marketing teams to allow them to work together. I mean, we in our business, we try and hit any leads that we get within 10 minutes or so. But it's a known fact that if you're not able to do that, then you pass that over so that someone else can achieve that. But it's about hitting that agreement and it being understood as well.
One of the reasons for poor morale and visibility is I've been into businesses where there's separate controls between the marketing and the sales teams, and the sales team are complaining that the marketing team aren't giving them any decent leads. It's just people have hit a touch on their website, and the marketing team are complaining that the sales team aren't following up all these riches of leads that they're providing. And both are true, but the point is they haven't agreed and put into their combined integrated system one marketing qualified lead process, one sales qualified lead process, something that's automatically going to be agreed by both parties.
And that's a really good place to start to get alignment between the two teams. We talk about inbound lead generation on the first part of this slide. If you haven't already started to look at insights such as blogs and landing pages, at social media posts, now's a good time to just think about your prospect base, your customer base, think about pain points and start to generate those insights, because they can be used by the sales team and by the marketing team combined, but it will really help to drive the relationship between the two teams as well.
One thing to also consider in this area is that if your sales team are unfamiliar, perhaps, as you can see, perhaps older gentlemen or like myself, they're, if you feel that your sales team aren't actually comfortable with social selling, maybe some training. It's a worthy investment for them.
So with that, let's move on to slide 3. Social selling, what's it about? Right now, there's still a huge fear when it comes to social. And, Charlie and I put ourselves in that bucket as well. I mean, we've had our social selling strategy just for a couple of years or so now, but it's fair to say we were scared about it and we didn't understand it to begin with. We're actually running a social selling webinar December the 10th for anyone that's interested, but that very much talks about where to start with social selling, what it is, but the real benefits of it are that it can give you insights at your fingertips. Your customers, your prospects are using social media right now. And if you're not on those platforms, like I said earlier, you could already be missing out because your competitors are there. They are speaking to these contacts and they may already be in touch with them. And of course, you don't want to miss out on that. It will absolutely help to improve the quality of your leads because you're able to understand the insights of the contacts and the companies that you're dealing with before they actually even speak to you. But it's a huge area to build your brand. I mean, I talk to a lot of my customers about, the fact that we have, we're swamped in the CRM industry with competitors. But we are very fortunate to have built our brand, and that's on social as well, in that, 40% of our new business, isn't it, Charlie, comes from existing customers that have referred us and reviews that we've had.
Absolutely. And that results in a good number of leads, but also an efficient sales process as well.
And the thing with social is don't be scared about it. There's a wealth of information out there about how to use social media and social selling. And our YouTube channel has a number of videos and resources on there as well.
I think if we talk about some of the temptations as well, the temptation that I've seen is we're almost in a social selling version 2, like there is on everything, customer service version 2, web version 2, all these things. There's a social selling version 2. Version 1 was where we sales professionals treated it like cold calling. So what you do is you go to Sales Navigator, perhaps using an automated tool, grab yourself a list of hundreds of people and do automated connect requests. And out of that 3,000 people, you might get 200 people noticing you and connecting, and then you get them straight in with a sales message. What can I sell you? And of course, that's naff. It's ridiculous. You can't sell to people like that. You might get numbers along the way. You might get some early successes. And of course, worse still, engage somebody else to do it for you. Use their LinkedIn profiles to do it for you. So we see a lot of that sort of early technique. What you're actually doing is it's a slash and burn technique where you might get some benefit now, but actually you're destroying your credibility in the long term. So it's worth taking some time to do it a little bit carefully. And also what you'll find now, there's a really good phrase about touch every deal every day with some sort of social mechanism, because what we've seen in the business-to-business selling market is that business-to-business buyers are becoming more and more like business-to-consumer buyers, and they're almost expecting a broader connection along the way with you.
So point 4, communication preference. This is really about using all the channels that are available and making it really easy for your leads, your prospects, your customers to get in touch with you. Yes, it's about using traditional methods like phone and email, but think about live chat on your website, or maybe a customer portal so that someone can order. We, with Gold Vision, have Adobe built in. Adobe eSign or DocuSign can make it really easy for your customers or even your prospects to get in touch with you. So this is about offering, yes, communication preference, but just making it really simple for your customers to get in touch and, build your customer experience and making it count.
Same with customer portals as well. So they've got a place where they can talk to you without having to worry about picking up the phone in COVID times and wondering if they're actually going to get through to anybody. I've also seen, a number of customers where their whole business is based on WhatsApp, for example. And if you think you're going to talk to those people and win those business by communicating with them in traditional email, you're wasting your time, because those emails often get ignored. And so you've got to go to those communication preferences of your customers.
And on to the last one. So, this really brings everything together, and it's offering a central tool with control processes so that everything is visible, everyone's using the same thing, there are guidelines in place, there's an agreement as to how information is captured, and absolutely continual improvement, but capturing everything regardless of where it's from in a central area and using it as part of meetings.
We talked about the Gloomy forecast as well, the external forecast. And so one of the things that we've done is we've increased the frequency of our sales meetings. Our sales meetings are very much held online using Gold Vision, one version of the truth. So everybody is looking at that single version. And that's got a control process in itself, because if the meeting may be split into two areas. One is to make sure that there is some input to the process. Where are the leads coming from? And if there is a distinct lack of leads, then that's what the meeting is going to focus on, how we get that and how we keep people's morale high. It may involve some one-to-one sessions before the meeting, but the control process is this, that if people just haven't got anything to bring to the table, then that requires obviously the extra one-to-one session to help them to
because they might be struggling, right?
Exactly, yeah, and actually identify the data and maybe realign some sales meetings to them from other people, but understand what's going wrong with them. What you might also want to do is don't discard the targets. Don't just leave the existing targets that were there. Adjust them to something realistic and also potentially make them broader. We've talked about communicating the right ways using social media. So we've got Jiggy and I were just talking about our social dashboard on our system. So we want to know if the person is complaining that they've had no leads, therefore how do you expect me to meet my target because it's a bad economy, all of those things. Well, how many social connections have they made in the last month? Whereas the person who's actually managing to meet a realistic target may have made quite a number of things. So what activity they're doing, how much are they doing on social? Are they actually exploring the touch points from your system? And by the way, there are new tools coming along. If those of you are interested in leads, and that's the highest response from this thing, have a look at the new Google Analytics tool. Google Analytics 4 is coming along, and that's going to be quite a game changer. I think they've realised how AdWords is looking a bit less productive these days because of the competition there. Have a look at the new AdWords technologies.
So with that, Charlie, I'm going to throw up another poll just to see how people are feeling right now. So the second poll is up there on reflection. From what Charlie and I have shown you, how are you feeling right now? Are you feeling smug because you're doing a lot of this already? Are you feeling a bit worried? Hopefully we haven't worried anyone. Or are you feeling energized because you've had some ideas, hopefully? And of course, we're both here either on LinkedIn or via email, which I'll post up at the end. Please do get in touch with us. We're here to help.
Well, it's already looking good. I don't think I'm going to have to call in the Samaritans at this stage.
That's brilliant. No, that's good to see, and it's great to see that you're doing a lot of it already as well. Some of you, which is brilliant. So here we are on to the last slide. So with what we've talked through today, it's very much about minding your own business forecast with some of the tips that we've talked about. And like we said at the very beginning, your sales team's processes will now be exposed with remote working, but now is the time to rethink the way that people are working, the way that your teams are working together, whether they're sales and marketing, and review your way of working with some of what we've said.
I'm going to leave you with a positive thought here. This business has now this is the third recession that this business has been through. We've been through two before that, and I personally like recessions. And the reason why I like recessions is because we lose a whole bunch of competitors. We do an annual review every year of all our competitors. And every year, especially during recessionary times, I lose a whole bunch of them. So I'm sure you will have the same experience, and just make sure that you're not one of them that disappears. But
please.
Thank you for your time.
Absolutely, thank you. And if anyone does have any questions for Charlie or I, please post them into the chat window. We'd be happy to answer those. And do feel free to get in touch. Our YouTube channel is up here. Do feel free to visit our YouTube area, subscribe. We've got some great videos and resources up there. So, please get in touch.